Is it just me, or has this gone by a little quick? Maybe it's just me, but I've thoroughly enjoyed the weekend. It's been truly a pleasure to come and to spend some time with this wonderful family in Christ. It's been a few years, and most of that's my fault. Herb has been so generous and kind to reach out to me, and we're trying to get this on the schedule, and that's been my fault. And I apologize, but at the same time, I don't apologize for that in some ways. I reserve a lot of my schedule each year to do teen weekends and teen events. And so, not that I have anything against adults, but I like hanging out with the kids. And so I usually don't have too many meetings a year that I call my adult meetings. But we found a way to make this a teen and adult thing. And so I appreciate that very much. And it was great getting to hang out with the Heinleys and thoroughly enjoyed their hospitality and to hang out with all the kids. And just appreciate everybody so much. And it's really been a good weekend. Thank you so very much. All right, grab that heavenly library. Take down the book of Judges and go to chapter 14. Judges chapter 14. We're going to begin this final lesson with the story of a special child. And whose child isn't special? You know, who doesn't have a special child? Well, this child was special, first of all, because an angel will announce his birth. And the angel will say, your child is going to be a deliverer of Israel. Now, does that sound a little bit familiar? But we're not talking about Jesus. Because this angel also said to the parents, you're not to cut your child's hair. He's going to be a Nazirite from the womb. Well, what exactly is a Nazirite? Well, a Nazirite is simply a vow or a consecration signifying that this individual has been separated to the Lord. And when you consider the life of Samson, the life of Samson was indeed separated in many ways. First of all, he's just going to be bigger than life. He's going to kill a lion with his bare hands. He's going to carry off the gates of a city on his shoulders. He's going to catch foxes and tie their tails together and put torches in the tails and set them loose in the fields of the enemies. He's going to be a redeemer, a hero. And at the end of his life, he will die in a very majestic way as he pulls down the massive pagan temple that is around him, killing thousands of the enemy. And so somebody like this deserves a big name. Does anybody know what Samson means? Sunlight. His name means sunlight. Did they call him Sonny when they were just trying to tick him off here, whatever else? Hey, Sonny boy. But he was a light in many ways. But yet, let's consider his life for just a moment. In Judges chapter 14 and in verses 1 through 3, this is how his life really begins. Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Then he came up and he told his father and his mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me, for my wife. But his father and his mother said to him, is there not a woman among the daughters of your own relatives or among our own people that you must go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. I want you to stop right here and think about something. Does he grunt when he says this? I mean, does he not sound like a beer commercial one way or another? Oh, saw a woman. Woman must have. Get her for me. And then his parents are like, no, son, no, son. And it's almost like he throws a tantrum. This is a big guy going, no, you don't understand. I got to have her. Get her for me. Well, what you see in Samson is that there is a demand. There's a demand in his life, and you see it flagrantly in this description of his life, in that he wants instant gratification. Now, if there's anything to be said to parents, and kids, hear me on this. Your parents really rejoice at two great days in your life, all right? First of all, it's the day you leave home. Yeah! That's a great day. Nothing against graduation, birthdays, or anything else. But we rejoice on the day of your weddings if God has blessed you with a good spouse. But that day is either going to be a day of rejoicing or a day of tears, depending on who you marry. Samson's parents are distraught. This is what you've chosen? I mean, granted, they don't technically know this girl, but they know of her family. They know of her nation. And she's an enemy of God. She comes from the enemies of God. She comes from the pagans. Isn't there somebody among your own people? Isn't there somebody right here among our own relatives around this area? Isn't there someone in Israel? No. I saw her. I want her. Get her for me. Proverbs tells us this in Proverbs 28:24. Whoever robs his father and his mother and says it's not a transgression is the same as a companion of a destroyer. I want you to recognize that Samson's robbing his parents of joy, of peace. He doesn't look for virtue in a wife. He only looks for looks. And I want you to consider another proverb. A man with an evil eye hastens after riches, and he does not consider the poverty that will come upon him. Before we continue in the story, let me ask you a little question. Is Samson just a little bit out of control? Is he just a little out of control? Verses 5 through 9. Then Samson went down with his father and his mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah. And behold, a young lion came toward him roaring. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. But he did not tell his father nor his mother what he had done. And he went down and he talked with the woman, and she was right in his eyes. And after some days he returned to take her. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. And he scraped it out with his hands, and he went on eating as he went. And when he came to his father and his mother, he gave some to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. Now let's stop right here for just a moment. This may be when we just read it, you're going, okay, what's the big deal? Well, okay, so he's eating honey. Well, it was actually a big deal. Because, first of all, he violated his Nazirite vow. He was to be consecrated and set apart. He should be avoiding anything unclean. Any dead animal is unclean. And he goes back to the animal and not only eats from the animal, but he picks up the honeycomb and whatever else, and he carries it home, and he encourages his parents to eat. Now, what is unclean? Not only is he now technically unclean, but so are his parents. And maybe that's the big deal for Samson. He's kind of the guy that if you tell him what the rule is, he's going to violate it just for the sake of violating the rule. It's the idea of water's sweet, but if it's stolen water, it's even sweeter. There's actually a proverb that says that in Proverbs 9, verse 17. To the scoffer, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. In other words, it's not about just getting a meal, it's to get it on the dangerous side. It's to get it with a little bit of controversy. And then to include your parents in it? Notice he doesn't tell them where he got it. And I could imagine the conversation probably went like this. Hey, Samson, where'd you get all the honey? It doesn't matter. Just enjoy. It's great stuff. It's great stuff. Great stuff. Enjoy. Oh, this is good. And they jump right in, trusting their son, not knowing that he has now not only robbed them of joy, now he's robbed them of purity in their relationship with God. Let me ask you again. Is Samson just a little bit out of control? Is he just a little out of control? If you read on in the story, what's interesting is he starts hanging out with his fiance's friends. And to prove to everybody that he's more than just muscle, that maybe he's got a little bit of brains mixed with that brawn, he comes up with this riddle that he makes up. And he offers a reward. Hey, if you can figure out this riddle, I'm so smart, but if you can figure it out, then I'm going to have a reward for you. And I'll give you a few days to figure it out. And so they're trying to all figure it out. They got to figure it out. And guess who they lean on to get the answer to the riddle? Well, his fiancée. And so, when you get down into verse 16, you find that Samson's wife wept over him. Now, if you're familiar with the marriage ceremony, they've kind of been married. There's 7 days of celebration, so they're just really getting started with their life together, and they're still kind of entertaining themselves with family and friends, so they're all still lingering around. And she's already crying. And she weeps over him and she says, "You only hate me. You don't love me. You put a riddle to my people and you've not even told me what it is." And he said to her, "Behold, I haven't even told my mother and my father. Why should I tell you?" And she wept before him the 7 days. Well, that's a great marriage starting out, isn't it? For 7 days she cries as their wedding feast lasted. And on the 7th day he told her because she pressed him so hard. And she went and told the riddle to the people. And the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" They answered the riddle. And I want you to notice what Samson does. He said to them, "If you had not plowed my heifer, you would have not found out my riddle." Now, I'm no biblical historian, but I'm going to assume calling your wife a cow, even back in those days, was not a good idea. I mean, it's one thing for her to come up to you and say, "Hey, how do I look in this dress?" It's another thing to refer to her as a heifer. You know what happened? They divorced. In 7 days, that wedding was over, and he gave her to the best man at the wedding. And what you see in the life of Samson is you see that he not only delights in the forbidden food, forgot to put that up there for you with the honey, but then you see that he also is now going to deal with the consequences very quickly of living a life without self-control. Hey, there's a woman for her. Get her for me. Hey, there's a lion. Let me eat from it. Hey, here's a riddle. Oh, you're going to cry about it. He's going to fold. What you see in Samson is a man who may have had a lot of brawn, but he had no discipline. A few tears, a little discomfort, he folds, he gives in. And I remind you of what the proverb said. A man with an evil eye who hastens after riches does not consider the poverty that will come upon him. I want you to also grasp and understand something else about Samson. God gave him an incredible birth. God gave him wonderful parents who longed for a child. God gave him incredible strength. God gave him a renowned name. In every way, you look at Samson, and he's the opposite of what you find in Joseph. Joseph had nothing, didn't get anything, lost everything, ended up in slavery, had nothing working in his favor. If you consider his good looks favor, that didn't even really work for him. But Samson had everything. Yet Joseph walks by the rules of the spiritual road, and Samson walks by his own desire. And what you see in the life of Samson is a man who is unequivocally out of control. The fifth rule of the spiritual road is I must lead a disciplined life. And what you find when you look in Scripture, unfortunately, when we look at the life of Samson, we see it from the opposite point of view of what lack of control looks like. He's quite the opposite, again, of what you see in Joseph, and what you see especially in our Lord Jesus, of what you see in Jonathan and in others. For a man without self-control, says the proverb, is like a city broken into and left without walls. Now let's just slow down for a moment. Maybe we're being a little too hard on Samson. Let's try to psychoanalyze this for a moment. Maybe it wasn't really all his fault. Now remember, he was a special child, right? You ever been around parents who really believe their child is special? Now, forgive me if you've done that. Your child may be able to speak 14 different languages by the age of 4. I get it. He may have already solved every calculus problem that he could ever, dream. I get it. But you know what generally happens to kids who are special? Oh yeah, they become special, all right. Especially annoying is what they become. That's what they become. So maybe his parents gave him too much. Maybe his parents were not the ones who really lowered the boom. Maybe it was his parents' fault that they created the monster. But even if they did, is that an excuse for him? Doesn't the prophet Ezekiel cover that, whether the parents are good or bad? Now, I personally don't take the opinion that his parents were bad. I'm of the opinion that Samson was a punk. And Samson allowed the physical attributes in his life to dominate his mind to the point that his confidence became arrogance, and his arrogance became ignorance. And it all centers around a simple rule of the road that he failed to live a disciplined life. We're wrapping up our series that began Friday night with the first lesson, the first rule of the spiritual road. I'm accountable for all of my actions. And so, Samson, you are accountable for all of your actions. The second rule of the spiritual road, I must fear God and keep His commandments. Samson, it is the fear of the Lord that you should have in your life. It is His commandments that should matter. I must surround myself with godly people. Samson, why are you going to the Philistines? Where is God in their life? I must embrace the role of a humble servant. It's not all about you, Samson. And I must lead a disciplined life. I want us to get into this subject tonight, and I want to get into it really for many reasons. But I'd like to share for you just from the outset, if I could preach one lesson to our entire nation, other than the sermon of salvation in Jesus, this would be the sermon I would want to preach. We live in a world filled with Samsons. We live in a world that lacks self-discipline. Self-gratification outweighs self-control. Failures are no longer personal faults. They're due to society's shortcomings. We want bailouts for bad choices. We want wages without work. We want good health without good diets. We want success without sacrifice. We want satisfaction. And ultimately what you find when you dig down and you dig down deeply into what is the challenge for all of us, and especially our society, is that we live in a society without discipline. Turn in your Bibles, if you would, to the book of Hebrews. And I want you to go to Hebrews chapter 12. And what makes this passage so powerful is what preceded it. In Hebrews chapter 11, we find this wonderful list of heroes of faith, if you will. And some have actually referred to Hebrews chapter 11 as the great hall of faith. And what you find in Hebrews chapter 11 is you find the lives, or the story shared briefly of men like Noah and Moses and Abraham. Great women like Rahab. And you see that they are set up on a precipice because of their faith. But I want you to grasp, in each and every one of their lives, there were challenges. There were heartaches. There were obstacles. But yet what made them strong and what led to their faith is that they lived with the discipline of the Lord. Moses, for example. Here's what it says of Moses. You talk about discipline. He chose the sufferings. He chose the reproaches of Christ, greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. Now, we kind of read that and we go, well, yeah, that's what you should do. You ever been the grandson of Pharaoh? Anybody here have a grandparent who just gives you everything? I was never so shocked in my life than the first time my kids went home with my parents and spent a couple of weeks. Those were not the same parents that I grew up with. They got Cocoa Pebbles for breakfast. Cocoa Pebbles. And they were allowed to put chocolate milk in with their cocoa. But you ever had Cocoa Pebbles? It's already 100% sugar. It's all chocolate. And then my mom would give them ice cream for breakfast, calling them healthy bars. She renamed ice cream. And she's like, son, it's made of milk. Look at that ingredient. I don't pronounce milk in any of those things. You just go on home. I'll send them home with you. And it took me a month to detox them. You're Pharaoh's grandson. Pharaoh's grandson. Don't you know he had a chariot that literally had 152 horses pulling it? You talk about some horsepower. Don't you know he had the best education, the finest clothes? Don't you know his life was just luxurious beyond our imagination? Pharaoh's grandson. And then there came a day in his life in which he remembered the teaching of Jochebed, his mother. And he goes, this isn't right. And from that day on, he became a shepherd, an exile. Every single one of the people in Hebrews chapter 11 have great faith because of their discipline. And so in Hebrews chapter 12, the wise writer of Hebrews speaks to us about the value of discipline. First of all, in the first 3 verses of chapter 12, we have the admonition to be reminded that we are surrounded by others, these great cloud of witnesses who disciplined themselves, and they ran a race, and they ran it with endurance. And you are to look to Jesus. Why? Because He's the founder or the perfecter of your faith. And then in verse 3, he gets down to the brass tacks of how it happens. Consider Him who endured from sinners such hostility against Himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted in your struggle against sin, that you have been resisted to the point of even shedding your blood. And have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord. Let me just share that again for emphasis. Do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord. No, be weary when reproved by Him, for the Lord disciplines the one He loves, and He chastises every son whom He receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you were left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. Besides this, we had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. How much more should we be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time as it seemed best to them, but He disciplines us for our good, that we may share in His holiness. I want you to grasp that what the Hebrew writer is sharing with all of us is the value of discipline. Just out of curiosity. All right, kids, this is your one moment. Your parents ever get onto you for looking around during church? My parents did. My parents said you can sit anywhere in the building you want, just as long as you're in front of us. And my parents sat on the second row. All right? And you weren't allowed to look around if you looked around in church. Bam! All right? You can look around in church. All right? I want you to look around in church. And if your parents get onto you, you let me know. I want everybody here who got a spanking growing up to raise your hand. Now, whoa. I mean a spanking. I mean a wooden paddle, leather belt, great fly swatter, an incredible wooden spoon, or any other instrument that could be pulled from their arsenal. All right? And you got a near-death experience. Raise your hand. All right. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Now, here's where it really gets good. Raise your hand if you deserved it. You're in church. Remember that. Who probably should have got more. Yeah. There's a few of us who are honest. Did you ever go say thank you? Did you ever come back in there and say, you know, Dad, I just got to tell you, that was really needed. I tell you. In fact, you know what? Just go ahead, a couple more. Right there, baby. Nobody does that. But here's what's interesting. As you get older, and you're around people who were not loved by their parents the way they should have been, you appreciated it. And you appreciate it even more when you have your kids and you deal with the frustration of carrying out discipline. Now, I will say this. I've never, ever said to my kids, this hurts me more than it hurts you, because it didn't. I was fine. No, this didn't hurt me a bit. I intend for it to hurt you. But it wasn't easy. You see, the discipline worked both ways. It was just as much discipline for me to discipline my children as it is for my children to receive discipline. And what you see in this text is not only our need for discipline, but we're reminded of our Lord's love for us in that He takes it upon Himself to discipline us. As the Father loves the child. And what you see in this beautiful text, and this is what the Hebrew writer's getting to, discipline's not negative, folks. There's so many words that unfortunately we've allowed our society to change and turn on us. Rules. There's nothing negative about rules. More often than not, rules are very good for us. They're boundaries. They protect us. They save us. Obedience. There's nothing negative about obedience. And there's nothing negative about discipline. And what you see in Hebrews chapter 12 is the secret behind the faith of all those that you see in Hebrews chapter 11. Their faith was great because they lived disciplined lives. They made choices. They made decisions that were not easy because they recognized their need for direction. They recognized their need for guidance. They recognized their need for boundaries. And they were so disciplined in their life, even when the choice the right choice was a challenging, hard, restricted choice, they took it because they were disciplined. I want us to wrap this up with simply an understanding of the value of discipline and how we need to live disciplined lives. And there's many, many, many things that we could say with respect to discipline to not just our lives spiritually, but our lives physically. How we spend our money. How we structure our home. How I spend my time. How I take care of my body. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy when you live in a world that is a fast food world to be disciplined with your body. It's not easy when you live in a world of instant gratification to restrict yourself from buying or borrowing. It's not easy, but it takes discipline. And I'd like to leave you with just 4 simple, quick take-homes of how we need to be people who lead disciplined lives. First of all, here's how you do it. Number 1, you become a person who seeks discipline. In other words, you live the life of a disciple. You know, disciple means a learner, a follower. I want you to look real closely at the word disciple. What word comes from disciple? Discipline. Isn't that interesting? This is a disciplined follower, a disciplined learner. Go back and look at all the examples that you find in Scripture of people like the Bereans who examined Scripture daily. They disciplined themselves to study daily. Look back at the first church in Acts 2 who continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine. Look at the guidance of Proverbs 1 verse 5 of encouraging the wise to listen and to increase in learning. Look at the examples of what you find in even the book of John and other places of where John will say, I'm writing to you, young men, to be strong in the Word. Tom and Dot Moss, Lil and Buzz Brewer, John and Becky Haley, Frank and Joyce Jamerson. Those names probably mean nothing to any of y'all. But you know who those people were? They were the people who were in the lives of me and Cheryl when we first got married. We vacationed with people who were 30 years older than us. We hung out all the time with those who were the shepherds and the leaders in the church, people who had great marriages, and we listened and we learned from them, and I still even lean on some of them today. I credit them with the strength of my marriage. I credit them with molding my character. You know what it tells us in the book of Titus and even through the words of Timothy? The older to teach the younger. But the older can only be effective in teaching the younger when the younger are willing to listen. Seek it. Seek it. Here's something really cool. Y'all ready? Look around in church again. Those of you that are married, and you've been married 5 years, raise your hand. Everybody who's been married, you were married, have been married, or were married at least 5 years, raise your hand. Get them up high. Come on, be proud of it. If they're sitting right there with you, come on, give them a big smile. Yeah, 5 years. 10 years. 15. 20. 25. 30. 35. 40. Isn't that cool? We got any 50s? Isn't that great? Next time you're at a movie theater, you know, when they're going through all the previews, go to the very front and turn around the audience and say, hey, raise your hand if you've been married 10 years. Got any 20s in here? 30s? 50? No? Well, you know the answer to that. First of all, most people who've been married that long don't go to movies. Second of all, that's not where you get marital advice. It's from the movies. Even society makes fun of Hollywood, don't they? With respect to their marriages. So why are we going to them for advice on anything else, folks? This is where you get a good marriage. And these are the people you learn it from. Seek constant discipline in your life and everything you can do. Secure your own needs first. Boy, this is important. Before you can take care of others, you got to take care of yourselves. I want to speak especially to all of our moms who are so busy and do so much. God bless you. But before you can help your children, you've got to take care of yourself. And husbands, let me just share with you, give your wife the time and what she needs to take care of herself. One of the things that you see in the life of Daniel that is so powerful is his life of self-control. It began with himself. We need boundaries, and we need to secure our own needs first. We need to be the person who recognizes that I need to take care of me. And we need to recognize that it's only up to me to take care of me. I'm not your project. I'm not demanding you take care of me. I need to discipline myself to take care of me. Anybody ever gone for a job interview? Yeah. You ever notice how you dress up for a job interview? The first job interview I really ever had was I was going to be a sacker for Furr's supermarket back in Lubbock, Texas. And I knew the guy. I knew the guy who was the manager. He said, yeah, come on down. I'll get you to fill out an application. But I'll never forget, man, this is a job interview. I put on a suit and tie to go in to be a sacker. I'm here, my hair was combed just right. I don't know if I had really a resume or anything else. And then I made everything. I think I even washed my car just in case he saw me drive up in it. You know, I'm here. Well, why do you do that? And why do employers look for neatness and organization in a person when they present themselves to them? Why do they look at the resume and how you spell or your grammar? Why is all that important? Because of this. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of my business. You're of no value to me if you can't take care of you. So you begin with yourself first. I like the quote, apart from God, every activity is merely a passing whiff of insignificance. And then what that means is this, you take care of yourself spiritually as much as you can. And you do that also by leaning on others. But he who heeds discipline shows the way of life, but whoever ignores correction leads others astray. Proverbs 10:17. How do you start doing it? Well, start with simple things. May I suggest to you, if you really want to be a disciplined person, be on time. Now, if you didn't make it on time today, I did not see it. I wasn't looking. It's just bad. Hey, nobody knows. Nobody knows. But that's a simple thing, folks. And let me just share with you, if you're habitually late, that's a choice, not a circumstance. The first 3 things on the to-do list for most people each year is to be punctual, be organized, and get in shape. And you know what are the 3 things on everybody's list next year? Be punctual, be organized, get in shape. I love the story of the person who said, man, halfway through the year, I only got 20 more pounds to go. How did you start with? Oh, I needed 25. Hey, yay! But usually for most people is, yeah, I wanted to lose 20. Now I only got 25 to go. That's how most of it works with us. And this isn't about just our bodies, but it's our heart and our time. Be a person who finishes what you start. If you start, finish, and quit whining. Quit whining. Do everything without complaining. You know, one of the great testimonies in the life of Joshua and Caleb, and it's repeated twice in the text. He did everything, this is what it says of Joshua and Caleb on separate instances. He did everything that the Lord commanded him to do. That was their attention to detail. To seek to do everything that the Lord commanded them to do. Begin with the simple things. Knock them out. Ephesians chapter 5 and other passages remind us that we need to redeem the time. Buy it back. Why? Because the days are evil. And understand there are certain seasons for everything with respect to time in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And then the fourth thing I would say to you is learn how to show some restraint. Does anybody here know what a gallon of milk costs? Anybody know? It's $42. You're like, oh my word, what's it like in Gainesville? No, it's the same price. Same price here as in Gainesville. Have you ever noticed where they put milk in the grocery store? Have you ever noticed? You know, most people say, I need to get a gallon and get out of here. If I was really a nice grocery store manager, wouldn't you put that right up front? You know, it's for that person that comes in late, get that milk and get on out. No. Where do they put it? It's in the back of the store. They know what they're doing. If you've ever noticed, all the healthy stuff where you really should be shopping is on the outside of the grocery store. The produce, dairy and all that, meat, it's all the good stuff. But before you can get to the good stuff, you got to go through all the cereal. And you're running through cereal and you go, oh, Cocoa Crisp, 3 for $1? Oh my, well, let's just get 3 of those. You never know who's going to be coming around. Batteries, 2 for $1. Let's get some more batteries. I have no idea what it is, but it's BOGO. Buy one, get one. And you get to the counter and you're going, hey, I've got a gallon of milk just cost me $42. Has anybody noticed that whenever you've looked for something on the internet, that it pops up on all your Facebook and social media pages? You're like, oh, I was just looking at those shoes and here they are again. Oh, here they are again. Oh, I go to ESPN.com, there they are again. Oh, it's a sign. No, it's advertisers who know that you have no self-control. 60+% of all purchases are impulse buys. The fact of the matter is, folks, we need to show some restraint in our life. Paul says he sought to bring his body under subjection at times. Extreme, maybe or maybe not. But let me remind you, self-control is also a part of the fruit of the Spirit. Learn to exercise it. Jesus said it like this: if your right hand causes you to stumble, what? Cut it off. Cut it off. Extreme? Maybe. Needed? Absolutely. Because you know your weakness. Cut it off. These are just some simple things to keep in mind. But I want to close with just a friend of mine by the name of Mark Denton. When he was 5 years old, he and his mother were in a horrific car accident. And his mother died. Mark was left paralyzed from the chest down. For over 45 years, he's lived in a wheelchair. For over 45 years, he's been extremely faithful to his God. And if you were to visit the church in Harvest, Alabama on a Sunday or a Wednesday night, Mark will be there in his chair. He's worked for NASA close to 30 years. He's never once taken a check for the government because he said, I can now take care of myself, and that's what I intend to do. I was asking him, Mark, what self-discipline mean to you? And he said, it's everything to me. It's the key to prevention. If I don't discipline myself, drink my water, if I don't move like I'm supposed to move, if I don't eat like I'm supposed to eat, I pay for it and pay for it dearly. Even with all the paralysis and all his prevention, he still had to deal with some amputations. And there's been weeks where he has to be in bed and can't move, and he works what he can while he's in bed. I said, Mark, what would you tell people who their life is hard and they're feeling challenged? He said, I'd tell them to pray it up. Remember, you're nothing without the Lord. And he said, I would remind them of the wonderful passage in Romans chapter 8. To be reminded of how the Spirit works with us. To be reminded that we need to lean on the Lord and seek His direction and discipline. He's the kind of person that I'll see on a Sunday and I just want to clap when they come in the door. He's one of my cloud of witnesses. Because he gets it. And he inspires. And I want you to see and understand, folks, that the value of your life is not in your circumstances, whether great or small. The value in your life is found in your love and your persistence and your walk with the Lord. And the Lord has loved us so much, He's not only given us salvation through His Son, He's given us a path. He's given us rules. Remember where we began this series with that guitar of mine? It's still going to be useless to me because I don't care. I can say it now. In my hands, it's useless. But here's what I don't want. I don't want my vessel to be useless in the hands of my master. And that's up to me. My Lord's done all that He can. And now He's inviting me to walk the path with Him. I'm accountable for all of my actions. Okay? I'm going to fear God and keep His commandments. Okay? I'm going to surround myself with godly people. Okay? I'm going to embrace the role of a servant. Okay? And to make sure I can do all those things with the grace and the mercy and the aid of my Lord, I'm going to lead a disciplined life. This morning, your Lord is calling you. He's calling you back home. If we can help you in any way walk in His path, won't you come and while we stand and sing?